Okay, looks like a few people are trickling in, but basically I just want to say welcome to the session. We're going to go through a lot of the important things having to do with Twitter today. So if you are new to Twitter, I think you'll learn a lot. So very quickly, just in case you weren't at any of the sessions so far, my name is Katia Hildebrandt. I'm one of the people who's helping to facilitate this course along with Alec Claros, and also just want to acknowledge the tremendous support of the Ministry of Education in Saskatchewan, which is definitely providing the support to allow this to run and to allow us to do this important work around digital citizenship. So thank you. Joanna Sanders is here from the Ministry. Hi, Joanna. So just a couple of quick reminders. If you haven't used Blackboard a whole bunch, you can move your chat around, so you don't need to keep it in that tiny little box. And you also should keep in mind that A, this is being recorded, and B, we can see, the facilitators or the moderators can see anything that you say to each other in private conversation. So just keep that in mind. So basically, I guess I want to get started by finding out who all of you are. So I'm going to throw up a slide here and just ask you to grab the little letter A and pull it on and tell me where you're from. And if you're participating from an iPad, you won't be able to write on it, but you can certainly tell us in the chat. Excellent. We've got LaRange here. Very nice. So on the side of the whiteboard, on the left-hand side, there, one of the little icons is a little letter A, and you can actually click on it, and then if you click on the whiteboard, you'll have a little text box. So it looks like we're a very, very Saskatchewan-based crew today. Possibly entirely from Saskatchewan. All right. So I am also in Regina. In case you weren't in my session earlier, I'm a PhD student at the University of Regina and also a sessional instructor in the core studies area at the university here. Oh, we have somebody from Texas. Very nice. All right. So we don't have a huge group here, so if you have a question, if you have something that you want to say, you can certainly grab the mic, or you can type it into the chat box, or even raise your hand if you really want to get my attention, and I will do my best to address anything that comes up along the way, and hopefully if there's something that I miss, Joanna can point me to it or you know, bring it up later. So. I guess we'll go ahead and get started then. So really quickly, here's what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what Twitter is and why it's awesome, why it's part of this course. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how to get started on Twitter, how to follow people, how to actually tweet, how to use hashtags, and how to use some of the applications that allow you to kind of organize your tweets so it doesn't become really overwhelming. And if anyone's thinking of participating in the Twitter chat tonight, some of those tools will be really helpful. But basically the idea is we want to make sure that you have the support you need to use Twitter effectively in this course because it's an important part of the kind of the learning spaces. So. Basically, Twitter is a microblogging platform, and it allows you to say kind of short things. You only get 140 characters, and it's designed like that for a purpose, so that it becomes a very small space to share writing. But in fact, you can share a whole bunch in that small 140 character bit of text, right? And so we'll talk about a little bit about how you can maximize those 140 characters. But essentially, Twitter is a lot more than just sharing what you had for breakfast. But it also depends a lot on who you follow. If you follow people who share what they had for breakfast, then you're going to read a lot about people's breakfast. If you are cautious about who you follow and you think critically about it and you don't just follow everyone, then you can build a network of people who can help you to learn and grow. So the slide I have pulled up is actually a slide that, or it's a tweet that Alex sent out earlier today, because it turns out he was doing his own intro to Twitter session somewhere in Ontario. And so he sent this out, and I think this is a great example of how powerful Twitter can be. So he sent out this tweet that said, you know, why should we use Twitter? And he got a whole bunch of responses. So I took a screen cap of some of them so you can see. I mean, he's got somebody who says it's better than PD, that you can make a lot of learning connections, you can get resources, even moral support. Basically that you can connect to all sorts of people to get information when you need it. Indeed, and Pinterest absolutely is another way that we can connect to people. So for sure, it's similar in a lot of ways. So just some other examples of what people said, you know, that you can talk to like-minded people around the world. I think that's really important, that you're able to connect to people not just in your local area, that you can talk to people who may share your interests in another country, on another continent. And you can get ideas for your classroom. You can showcase the things that are going on in your classroom and reach a much wider audience. So Twitter, once you start using it and once you start exploring some of the things that it allows you to do, can be a really powerful tool. But Twitter is also really frustrating when you first get started, because until you're following people and people are following you, it can seem like a very isolated tool where you're just kind of by yourself. You're sending these tweets out into the universe and nobody ever talks back to you. I had a friend who was complaining to me that she had sent this tweet out, and it was about something to do with some kind of campaign that she was working on, and she wanted people's feedback on this question that she'd asked, and nobody responded to her. And I said, well, how many Twitter followers do you have? And she said, well, I guess only 5 of them. And I said, well, then only 5 people saw what you had to say. So we have to keep that in mind. There are ways to connect to larger groups, but you have to remember that not everybody is necessarily seeing your tweets, and so that may be why you're not getting responses. So we're going to do a quick poll just to get a sense of where we're at here. So I'm wondering if you have a Twitter account at this point, whether you've used it or not, whether you actually have a Twitter account. So there is a little check mark right under your name, and it looks like some people have already figured it out. And you can either click yes or no based on that. And I don't think this works with the iPad, so you can let us know on the chat if you're using a mobile app. So far we've got 9 to 1 plus another no on the chat, so 9 to 2. Oh, all right, we got 11 to 2. So the majority of people have Twitter accounts. And absolutely, that's great. If you set it up last week to participate, this is exactly the session for you. So perfect. All right, so those of us who don't have Twitter accounts, I am going to encourage you as we go into kind of the screen sharing part to go ahead and sign up for a Twitter account. And I think you'll find the sign up process is pretty simple. It just involves choosing a username and giving Twitter some of your information. But I will encourage you to do that just so that it's a little bit easier for you to kind of play along when we do some of the other stuff in here. So basically the first thing that you need to do when you actually go about setting up a Twitter account is to personalize kind of your Twitter ID. So the very first thing that I would recommend is that you get rid of that egg. And there are a few reasons for that. First of all, nobody wants to send messages to an egg because we have no idea who you are. And in fact, a lot of people will think that you're spam, like a spammer. Twitter may very well think that you're a spammer. Twitter, it turns out, has some pretty complex algorithms for figuring out if you're a real person or not. And one of the things they look at is whether you have a profile picture. And so if you have the egg still, there's a good chance that if you tweet to a hashtag, it won't show up to it. That it just makes your tweets that much harder to find and that much harder to give credit to. So you want to pick a profile picture that represents the identity that you want to have on Twitter. So if you're using this for a professional account, if you're planning to maybe connect with parents on Twitter, if you're planning to connect with colleagues, even with students, then you want to make sure that that picture obviously is professional and that it kind of portrays the part of you that you want to have out there as your Twitter image, I guess. And you want to make sure that you're not constantly changing your profile picture just because people will actually learn to recognize that profile picture. And so if you're changing it up, it's going to be harder for people to see that it is in fact you who's tweeting. So pick something that you like and then generally stick to it. I'm not saying you can never change it, but don't, it's not the place perhaps to be changing it up every week or even every month, just because you want to get that consistency where people are recognizing that image of you. You also need to pick a username, which is also called a Twitter handle. So that thing with @ in front of it, the little @ symbol, that's your Twitter handle. And you can actually change that if you've already set it up. You can change your Twitter handle. But again, I wouldn't recommend changing it too often because, again, people are going to get used to that being your Twitter handle. One thing to think about when you come up with a Twitter handle is how many characters you're actually using. Because if somebody wants to tweet back to you and you have a Twitter handle that is 20 characters long, you've already used up 20 of those 140 characters. And so they're not going to be able to say as much to you. So just keep that in mind. I know it's hard if you have, like I certainly have a long name, a long last name, and so it can be kind of difficult to shorten it sometimes, but just keep it in mind that you don't want a super long Twitter handle. You also want to think again about what kind of identity you're portraying through that Twitter handle, and making sure that it is professional if you're using this for professional purposes. And finally, you want to come up with a Twitter bio, and we'll take a look at a few Twitter bios in just a minute, but you want to keep in mind that your Twitter bio is going to help people to figure out who you are and to connect with you. And so you can do things like including keywords, even including hashtags, that'll make it easier for people to search you out and to connect with you and to follow you. And one more thing before we get onto Twitter itself is just to, as you set up your account, one of the things you have the option to do is to protect your account. And what that means is that only people who you give permission to can see what you tweet. And I wouldn't recommend protecting your account just because it makes it really hard. You can't tweet to a hashtag, for instance, because it won't show up, it's protected. And so it makes it really difficult to connect to others. So if you have a personal account, then absolutely that's kind of, if you want to have your special personal account where you're talking to your friends, then maybe you want to have a protected account, but probably not for your professional account. So Michelle's asking how you unprotect it, so we will take a look at that in just a minute, okay? We'll get on to the settings. So I'm going to do a screen sharing. So I'm about to get onto Twitter. Bear with me if it's a little glitchy just because it runs slowly over this platform, so I'll try to move slowly through the page. So you should now be seeing my Twitter homepage. Are we all seeing that? Excellent. Okay, so this is the home screen of Twitter. So if you have a Twitter account and you log in, it's going to look like this. So some quick things that we notice about this page. You've got your home tab. This is your feed. And your feed includes everyone who you follow. So anyone who you follow, anything they tweet will show up on this home screen. You'll also see that Twitter will recommend the people they think you should follow. Sometimes Twitter's a little crazy, sometimes they're right on. So take it with a grain of salt. The next tab over is the Notifications tab. And the Notifications tab will tell you who's followed you, who's mentioned you on Twitter. We've got this adorable picture of a pug. Just anytime somebody's favorited your tweet or has retweeted you, anything like that. So you'll notice all of this is basically anything on Twitter, unless you've protected your tweets, is pretty much public. Now that doesn't mean that people are necessarily going to see it, but it is searchable. Somebody can go and they can search out my name and they can see anything really that's, that's been sent to me or that I've sent out. The Discover tag is the next one over. It basically just tells you kind of, it's things that they think that I'm going to like. So things that have been favorited by people who I follow. It's not terribly accurate to your likes and dislikes, but sometimes it can be interesting. And then finally, we've got the Me icon. And so this is just, this is basically your Twitter profile page, and it was redesigned recently, so it looks a little bit more like Facebook, basically. But so I've got kind of this big image. You can put, whatever you want here. It will only show up on this screen. It doesn't show up in your individual tweets. And here's my profile picture. And then below that, I've got my profile bio. So I'm using keywords to try to make it easier for people to find me. So I've got education in here. I've got education or ed tech, social justice, and narrative, things that I'm interested in. And then some hashtags that I might be chatting with or mentioning. So ed chat, DigCit, which is the digital citizenship hashtag, and higher education. And then also my location, right? And so this is basically what people will see if they're interested in knowing, what I'm about. And often when I go to follow somebody, I'll take a look at their profile page and I'll look at maybe the last, 5 or 10 tweets just to see if these are tweets that I want to have in my home feed, right? Because if I open up your page and the last 5 things you've tweeted about are all Justin Bieber related, I probably won't click follow. Just because I don't necessarily want to learn more about Justin Bieber, even though, I appreciate some people like him. So those are the big 4 important kind of tabs. And then we also have this little box. This is the direct messages envelope. So direct messages are messages that are only between you and another person. And so it's a little bit more of a private side to Twitter. Now I think it's always important to remember that, things can get out. Facebook certainly has had instances in the past where things that were private messages seem to go public. So, always be cautious, but that is the more private thing where you're not trying to broadcast your messages to everybody on your follow list. Then we have the little settings button. And so under my settings, this would be where I could decide if I want to protect my tweets. I'm trying to figure out where it is because I've never actually gone to protect my tweets. I'm guessing it's under security and privacy. Yeah, so under privacy, I think the default is actually to not protect your tweets. But so if I wanted to, I could go to protect my tweets right there. There's also this interesting thing that happened recently, which was that they added photo tagging in Twitter. And so I have it set to only allow the people I follow to tag me. But you can also say that you don't want anyone to tag you in photos. So this is all kind of your, your background information in terms of security and privacy. So those are kind of the main profile things going on with Twitter. I guess the next thing would be to think about how we actually go and follow people on Twitter. So you have to remember that, again, everything here, these are people I follow on my home screen. And anytime I tweet out something, the only people who will see it are the people who follow me, unless I use a hashtag, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So your audience really is just the people who are following you. Now again, as I said, anybody can search your tweets, but those are the only people who are really, who are actively going to be seeing your tweets because they're following you. So if I want to follow someone, there are a few ways to do that, because basically once you get your Twitter account, you're going to want to start to follow some people. So one thing that I might do if I want to follow people is, in the context of this class, I may want to follow the people who are in this course. So what I've done here, and I'll throw the link into the chat here, but we've actually created a Twitter list, which is now in the chat. And so if I go under me and then, let's see, lists, what we've done is we've compiled this list of anybody who's in DCMOOC if they provided their Twitter handle when they actually when they signed up for the course. So if you're not on this list and you would like to be, just send me a tweet, and certainly then I can add you to it. But so this may be one source for actually finding some people to follow who have similar interests to you. Because what I can do, I mean, if I first click on the list, it's going to give me all of the tweets from anybody who's in the list. But I can also take a look at the list members. And if I wanted to, I could just go down the list of members and I could follow everybody. And I can also see who's subscribing to the list. So you can actually subscribe to this list, and then it'll make it easier for you to see the tweets that are being put out by people in this particular group. So that's one way that you might go about following people. Now, if I just want to follow somebody who I know about, so let's say I already follow Joanna, but let's say I want to follow her. So I can type in her name. It comes up very nicely. And there's this big button that says following, and since I'm already following her, it says following instead of follow, but I could unfollow her. And then this is what it looks like if somebody doesn't, if I don't follow that person already. So then I can just click follow, and that will lead me to be following her. And she'll get a notification that says that I did follow her. So it's pretty simple to follow somebody on Twitter. So again, I would recommend maybe looking at the list of people in DCMOOC. Yeah, and Joanna has a new follower, although it seems unfair that I unfollowed you and then you had to get another notification about it. That is pretty simple process to actually go and follow somebody, but basically what I would recommend is that when you find somebody who you like what they're tweeting about, that they're putting out a lot of good stuff, that you take a look at some of their followers. This works better with people who don't have 1 million followers. So for instance, Alec tweets fantastic stuff, but trying to get new people to follow by looking at his list is just going to be a bit overwhelming because he has like 50,000 followers. But so maybe I'm looking for people who are interested in education, and I know that Joanna is in education, so I might look at the people she's following, and maybe I decide that I want to follow some of these people. So I can look at their Twitter bios, and this is why it's really important to have a good Twitter bio that tells us who you are, because people are going to make judgments based on it. So then I might go through and follow some of the people that Joanna follows. Is everything making sense so far? Just a check-in. Are there any questions so far about Twitter, about what's going on here? either there are no questions or we've all just, you know, given up on Twitter. I'm hoping it's the first one. All right, so that's kind of the process of following. And then I guess, and the pizza guy came, awesome. It sounds delicious. A little jealous now. And yeah, I mean, I think it is another social media platform, so there are a lot of similarities. So I guess the next step then is obviously that you want people to follow you back. So basically, one of the ways to get people to follow you obviously is to follow them. And a lot of people, if they're, you know, for the most part, if somebody follows me and they're not just a spam account or something, I will usually follow them back. You want to make sure that the number of people you're following isn't a lot higher than the number of people who follow you. And that's actually because there are some weird things going on around Twitter where people will look at that and they'll say, oh, this person isn't really interesting because look how few followers they have in relation to how many people they're following, and they actually may not follow you then. So it's kind of an odd subtlety of the way Twitter works, but generally keeping these two numbers, keeping the your following number lower than your followers number is a really good idea. Because I guess it just makes you look more like you're the cool kid on the block. It's a little ridiculous, but that is sort of how it works. So now you are following some people, hopefully you have been followed by some people, so now you actually need to start tweeting stuff. So there are, you know, a few different things that we can do with respect to actually tweeting. So the one thing that we can do is we can retweet what somebody else has put out there. So if I'm looking on my home feed and I see something, you know, that's super interesting to me, I can click. So interesting. Mark Zuckerberg, we'll take a look at this one. All right. So if I click on this tweet, there are a bunch of different things I can do. So one of the things I can do is I can reply to that tweet. And if I reply, what happens is that anybody who is mentioned in the tweet is actually going to be included in my reply. Now, if I only want to reply to the person who actually wrote the tweet, I can just delete anybody else who's mentioned. But you know, I'm able to send a reply, and Twitter will kind of do that automatically. Now, as soon as my tweet starts with this little @ sign, that means that that tweet is basically a message going pretty much directly to that person. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't see it, but it means that the only people who are going to see it are people who follow both you and this first person who's mentioned in the tweet. So if somebody follows both me and Joyce, then they'll be able to see this tweet. But other people won't be able to see it unless they actually go looking for it. It won't show up on their home feed. So if you want to reply to somebody but you want it to be visible to anyone, you can do a number of things. You can put "hey" in front, you know, so that you're getting rid of that @ symbol at the very beginning. You can just put a dot at the beginning. That will show Twitter that you want it sent out to everybody. But basically putting anything in front of that @ symbol is going to make sure that it goes out to everybody. Otherwise, it's going to be treated like a reply. So that's one thing I can do with a tweet, right? I can reply to somebody else's tweet. I can also retweet. And I can retweet in two different ways. So I can retweet using the retweet button, which is just going to send it straight out. Or I can do what's sometimes called a manual or an old-fashioned retweet. And that just means that I'm going to it's a little bit harder in this itself, like in the Twitter program itself. It's easier when you're using a Twitter client, but I can kind of copy and paste everything. I can go to compose a new tweet, and then what I can do is, and I'll kind of clean it up because it took everything with it, but I can say retweet this person. I can say that I'm retweeting them, RT, And then I might put this person into quotation marks, just to let people know that I'm using somebody else's tweet, right? And I'm acknowledging them. Now, if I don't want to use all of their tweet, which I can't at this point because it's too long, it's highlighting it because I'm 9 characters over. And that's because this person has a long name. So if I don't want to use the entire tweet, maybe I want to take some things out, then what I can do is I can change the RT to MT, which stands for modified tweet, and it just lets people know that I took something out of the original. And maybe I just take out, you know, this first part and that's describing what it's about. And so I'm just leaving the quotation because I think the quotation maybe is more interesting. And so then I can tweet this, and I'm still giving credit, but I'm saying, yes, I did change something about your original tweet. I'm not going to send this out because it's not a terribly interesting tweet. What if I want a particular someone to get my retweet? Okay, so even if I wanted, I guess if I wanted somebody to see that I was retweeting this, then I'm going to need to use the manual retweet. So, okay, so Joanna tweeted something out. So let's say I want to retweet this. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to go to Compose New Tweet. It remembers that I was doing this before. Put it in there. Okay. So let's say I want to direct somebody's attention to this. So maybe I want Alex to see this so that he knows that I'm not doing a horrible job right now. So I can put the retweet in here, same as before. And then what I can do is I can put Alex's Twitter handle anywhere on this tweet and he'll get a notification. So 2 things I could do. If I put him at the very beginning, then it's going to be one of those kind of direct tweets. And so only somebody who follows both me and Alex is going to see it. Or if I still want everybody to be able to see it, but I want to make sure that Alex sees it too, then I can just put him anywhere. So I can put his Twitter handle at the end. And sometimes people will say CC just to let them know, you know, I'm trying to draw this to your attention. Anytime somebody is mentioned in a tweet that means that I put their Twitter handle in, they're going to get a notification that says you've been mentioned on Twitter. So if you're trying to draw somebody's attention to it, that's how you do it. You just make sure that their name is somewhere in there. And you usually run out of space. Yeah, and so that's where the modified tweet kind of comes in handy, that I can take certain things out if I need to. So yeah, it is tricky and it's really frustrating to do the old-fashioned kind of tweeting, just like the old-fashioned retweet, because you run out of space really easily, and so that's why it's important that you don't have a super long Twitter handle, because I know it's really frustrating to me when that happens and I'm trying to tweet something out and I just don't have enough characters. But you can also use modified tweet, and you know, maybe I need to make it shorter, well, I can put a 2 in there. Things like that can just give me a few more characters and I can play around with it. So I can reply, I can retweet, I can also favorite a tweet. So maybe, you know, I really like what Joanna tweeted there, so I can click favorite. And now it's going to show up in my list of favorites, so I can easily access it later. And people use the favorite button sometimes as kind of a show of support, right, as a like button type thing on Facebook. But you can also use it as almost a curation method where you're trying to, maybe you want to remember that you're trying to look at it later, or that you just want a record of it. Is it considered unprofessional if I use it too? I mean, I think that there is some flexibility on Twitter in terms of understanding that often we do things just because we need a couple extra characters. And so I think in a lot of spheres there would be less judgment about this on here when it's, I mean, if you're only using 10 characters and you're using a 2 and a 4 and a whole bunch of other abbreviations, then it's not about that. But if you're kind of squeezed for space, it doesn't look too bad. And I think that not too many people are going to judge you if it's clearly being done for space purposes. Okay, so those are kind of some of the things that I can do in terms of tweeting. I can also, I guess, just write a tweet, right? So I can, in that tweet, I can do all sorts of things. I can include a link, and Twitter actually will shorten your links automatically for you. So even if they're really long, it doesn't necessarily matter. They're going to, like, it will shorten it quite a bit. It used to be that you had to do that manually. You can also tweet, you know, personal messages. You can tweet about your day. You can tweet about what you're learning. And I think research shows that, in fact, if you are, you know, at least for university professors, they found that having a mix of personal and professional actually makes your students give you more credit. So I think it's definitely important to be professional, but that's not to say that you can't occasionally say, like, hey, and here's, you know, something that I'm doing on a personal level, that I'm getting pizza for dinner, or that I went for a run, or something like that. And that in fact can be a positive part of your professional identity, because there's a humanizing aspect to that, right? So how many of you have actually sent out tweets before? Is there anyone who's never sent a tweet out? So you can tell me in the chat function if you'd like. Okay, so we have a few who have never sent one out. So we're going to give it a shot. Okay, so we're gonna give that a shot right now. So I'm going to send out kind of a sample tweet, and I'm going to ask you to just respond to me. So I'm going to click the little feather button, and in the top right corner, and that's going to allow me to compose a new tweet. So let's say I want to tweet about what I'm doing right now. So I might say, talking about Twitter with a great group of hashtag DCMOOC people. And then maybe I'll invite you to introduce yourself. So I might say, can you intro, it's always fun to type when people are watching. Can you introduce yourselves, please? Use hashtag DCMOOC. And you'll often see things like that going out on Twitter. And basically it's saying, you know, if you're going to respond to my tweet, please can you use this particular hashtag so that it's easy for people to find the responses. So my tweet, because I've used the DCMOOC hashtag, is going to go to a few different places. It's going to go to anyone who follows me, and it's also going to go into the DCMOOC hashtag. So anyone who searches for that is going to see that. So if I send this out, I'm going to tweet it out. So I'm going to invite you now to try it out. Good, Ramona. I hope you do. I feel like we all need to, I think it's a long process, and certainly it's one that I've kind of struggled with as well in terms of feeling like I don't have anything to say online, but I think that there's certainly a lot that we all can share, and that we do all have these unique ideas. It's just that we're maybe not confident in them. So if you'd like, see if you can reply to my tweet. So just, you know, when you look at my tweet on your Twitter screen, if you're logged into your account, just hit the reply button, and it'll bring it up, and it'll kind of auto-reply for me. And if you throw the DCMOOC hashtag in there, it will allow everyone to see it too. And look, we've already got a response. Excellent. I'm not going to reply to myself because that'll make me look a little crazy. So we've got one response already. Anyone else want to give it a try? And let me know if you're having issues with it. Awesome. Thank you, Ramona. You know, this is it's actually something that I think about a lot, and it's because I work with pre-service teachers, and they express a lot of fear about putting themselves on the internet because we ask them to make e-portfolios, and they're constantly saying, you know, I don't feel like I have anything to share, and I just think that that's not true, that we all have something to share, and it's just about figuring out what that thing is. Awesome, and we've got some new people. I don't know if I follow you, so do I follow you? Let's see, I'll click on you. Oh, and I do follow you already, great. I'm a pretty equal opportunity follower, so if you follow me, I usually follow you back. So, you know, give it a try. If you are feeling like, you know, like this is something you can do, then give it a try in terms of just testing it out and tweeting out a few things. And I think what's really nice about starting in this kind of course is that you've got this audience already with the hashtag, and people are going to see what you're saying, and so it'll be less like tweeting into nothingness. And I think that's, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about whether parents are actually going to see what you tweet, and so making that kind of public and letting your parents know that, you know, that you are tweeting is important, I think. I know that Claire Kruger, she's not here today, but she is in part of the course, and she does a great job. She made a classroom Twitter account, and you know, so she tweets out the things that she's doing in the classroom. So looks like we're feeling all right about tweeting here. This is good. Awesome. So are there any questions before we move on? Because I'm going to talk a little bit about hashtags now, I think, because I think that's an important next step here. All right. So if anything comes up that you're still wondering about, certainly let me know. But we're gonna talk quickly about hashtags. So basically, as I said before, when you tweet something out, the only people who are going to see it are your followers, unless you use a hashtag. And so it's really, really important that we kind of work towards building hashtags into the things that we're tweeting out so that we're able to reach bigger communities. So I'm going to pop this into, if it will actually let me click on the whole thing. This is a Google Doc that has a great list of educational hashtags. So essentially, these will allow you to tap into certain conversations because, you know, while somebody may not be following you, they may see your tweet just because you put a particular hashtag on it. So some of the big ones, of course, would be, I mean, you've probably seen EdChat or EdTech if it's something related to technology. But those ones are really quite big, and so sometimes if you're looking for a more specific audience, you want to put a more refined hashtag on it. So, for instance, if you're a first grade teacher and you tag something with first chat, there are first grade teachers who are going to be following that, and so you may be able to tap into them as an audience. If you're looking at arts education, you've got Arts Ed. If you're looking at, say, science education, you can use SciChat, SCI chat. Math chat or Chat for English, SS chat for social studies, and so you can really tap into a really kind of a particular audience and get your message to a broader group of people. So even you can see DigCit, which is the digital citizenship hashtag, and so if people are sharing resources or other things around the idea of digital citizenship, they might put that on there. Can I send you the link? I popped it on the chat. Do you see it there? It's the Google Docs one. I can also tweet it out, and if I tweet it out, then you can favorite it and see it later if you'd like. So I will do that as well. So you might say, awesome list of educational hashtags. And then I just put in the link. You'll notice it doesn't take up a whole bunch of my characters because it shortens it. And then I might put hashtag EdChat, just because it has to do with education. I'm going to put DCMOOC. And I guess those are probably the big ones I'm going to use here. So I'm going to throw those two on there. And so now it's going to go into the EdChat and the DCMOOC chat, kind of into those hashtag searches. So now, if I want to see where this miracle hashtag has gone to, there are a few ways that I can kind of follow a hashtag. So one way is if I go to the Twitter homepage, I can just search in here. So you can see that I've been searching for DCMOOC. So if I type in hashtag DCMOOC, and I click go, it's going to pull up, and I just click on all so I see everything. It's going to pull up this list of anybody who's tweeted on there. And yeah, it's not case sensitive, so it's going to show up anyway, whether I use the capitals or not. So now I've got a list of anyone who's chatted or who's tweeted with the DCMOOC hashtag, and I can kind of scroll through. You know, I can see what's going on. I can read through people's tweets. So this is kind of an alternative to that list. You add a photo, because when you add a photo, it's actually it's working again through a link, right? So when you tweet the photo out, it's actually going to say like pic.twitter.whatever. So it is taking up some of your space because it's including a link to the photo. So the Twitter list, that's what I was talking about earlier. It's the just a list that you can create. So of particular educators, of whatever you want. So if I go to me and I look at my lists again, I can actually create lists of any kind of educator I want, so, or any kind of group of people I want. So I have, you know, this is a Twitter list from a class I taught this semester. And so here's the list of the DCMOOC participants. And I can create a new list. And then from there, I can just kind of curate a group of people together who I want to see all of their tweets. And so what I'm going to do now is we're going to actually go over to a Twitter client, and that way you can see kind of how lists can be used really functionally. And I guess that's the last thing we're gonna chat about today. But so at a certain point, it becomes difficult to see all of the people who are on your Twitter chat here, right? So it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of overwhelming to see all of these people. And so sometimes it's helpful to be able to curate that kind of list of people who you're following and to be able to more easily search for particular hashtags or whatever. So hold on, I'm just going to pop the Twitter list thing into it, into the chat box, and then we're going to go over and look at a Twitter client. It really doesn't want me to actually copy and paste this. There we go. All right, so here's the Twitter list. It's in there now for you. Okay, so there are two kind of big Twitter clients that I can use to organize my Twitter life. One of them is Hootsuite, and that is the one I would recommend if you're using a mobile device. So Hootsuite, kind of like an owl, like this. And the other is TweetDeck, and that's the one that works really well on desktop. So I'm going to show you that one today. So basically, TweetDeck looks like this. If you can see what my screen looks like here, this is TweetDeck. And what it does is it gives me a variety of columns of different things that I want to have on there. And essentially, you just log in through your Twitter account, so you don't need to really have a separate account or whatever. You just basically, it'll ask you if you want to log in through your Twitter account. And So when you first get it, it'll have a home column, and that's the same as your Twitter list, basically, like your Twitter home screen. But also it'll have your notifications, so all of those things with favoriting and retweeting, all of that's going to be automatically in your TweetDeck account. But then you can, and I think it'll also add in, I believe it adds in direct messages and activity automatically. And activity is just things that people on your Twitter list are doing. But then I can add in as many additional columns as I want. So you can see I have a DCMOOC column, I have an EdTech column, one from a class I taught. And so to add new columns, basically I just click on Twitter search. So let's say I want to search for, we'll just add another DCMOOC column, it's not going to hurt anything. So I search for whatever it is that I want to be looking at. And at the very bottom, it's going to ask me if I want to add a column. And so I just click Add Column. And it brings in a new column. And I can drag things around somewhere, somehow. It's very slow. But I can drag things all over the place. I can move the columns around. And now instead of having to search for it every single time, I'm able to just look at this column and it's already there. So the other thing I can do is I can add a list column. So if I scroll down here, I can actually add, I can go to where lists is here. And so here is my DCMOOC list. And I can add a column for that list. So if you gather a group of educators you really want to be following along with, then you can actually go and you can make a particular list for that. I can also, so I can also add different columns based on, so I can add mention columns, I can add a column for anytime somebody follows me, I can add a column for things that are trending, and then from here I can also add a list column. These are all the lists that so I can add a list that I'm subscribed to. So let's say, for instance, you want to add my list, okay? So I'm not gonna add my own list because it's not gonna work out very well, but let's say I want to add a list that Alec has. So I would go into his account, I would look at his lists again, and let's say I want to subscribe to education at the University of Regina. So I'm looking at people who are at education in the University of Regina. I can click on the list, I can subscribe to it, and now, if all goes well, I should be able to add that list because I subscribe to it. So it's down here, so it would show up on yours if you subscribe to my list, for instance. And now I can add a list for this. I can add a column for this one. So it just makes it a little easier to organize what I'm doing. So for instance, tonight, if you are joining our Twitter chat at 7 p.m., then you can actually add a column for the hashtag that we're using. So for instance, I might type in hashtag DCMChat, which is the Twitter chat the hashtag we're using for the chat tonight. I search for it. There's not a whole lot there so far because we haven't done it yet, but I'm going to add a column. And so tonight, when I participate in the Twitter chat, instead of having to search for it all the time, it's really easy for me to just look at what anyone in the chat is talking about. So I think those are kind of the big things that you need to know about Twitter. Are there any questions right now? Okay, this is good news, I think. No big questions right now. I'm going to stop screen sharing now. I'm going to head back to the other screen. So basically, anything we need to know, if there is something. Okay, so TweetDeck is good for desktops. Hootsuite, I don't have an iPhone, but I know it works really, really well on the iPad. So Hootsuite is certainly one that I would recommend. So again, that's Hootsuite. And that would be the one that I'd recommend as a mobile app. And I think it just makes it a lot easier to not use the regular Twitter, like the regular Twitter platform when you're doing something like participating in a chat. It makes it really hard to follow things. So if there's not anything else, problem logging in today. I'm sorry to hear that. We should, if you send me an email about that, we'll see if we can figure that out so that there's not an issue next time. But I guess if there are no other questions, just a reminder that we are holding the first Twitter chat tonight at 7 p.m. That you can participate as much or as little as you want to. It'll basically be, we'll just be tweeting out some questions. So most of the questions will follow a Q1 format. So it'll say Q1, it'll give a question, and so when you answer it, just make sure that you start your answer off with A1. And make sure that you're putting the DCM chat hashtag in there so that people are easy to follow or find it easier to follow your responses. Yeah, I hope that this was helpful and that you'll get started on Twitter, because I think there's a lot that we can do on there and it's a fantastic tool. So have a good evening, everybody. Hope to see you a little bit later in the Twitter chat, and if not this week, then next week. Thanks so much, everybody.